Well, good morning and welcome to NAWBO's fall education event, Money Matters. Really? I'm Sam Shear. Oh, whoa, okay. All right, now, I'm Sam Shear, current president of NAWBO Cleveland. Isn't this facility cool? Very cool. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. There's going to be coffee, tea, juices over here throughout our event today. The water station is in the back corner here, and the food will be refreshed throughout the day. And for bathrooms, all you do is go out this door and go to the end of the hall. You don't have to go upstairs. They're right there for us. And if you arrive too late to get a tour of the convention center before the meeting, you've not missed out. We're going to have one afterwards for everybody that came late. Or just on time but missed the tour. At this time, I want to extend a very special welcome and thank you to our event sponsor, PNC Bank. I would also like to thank our media sponsor, the Cleveland Women's Journal. And last but not least, thank you to the committee that made this event happen. Please stand as I call your name. From PNC Bank, Matt Marsher, Liz Victor, let's hold it until we get everybody up, Jim Nowak, and Elena Ray. We got them? And from NAWBO, Liz Radovoyevich, Jennifer Corso, and Alice that I don't believe's here. Good job, ladies. NAWBO's mission is to create pathways of opportunity for women entrepreneurs to advance economically, socially, and politically through education, connections, and mutual support. Our event today is focused on the economic and educational aspect of our mission. Let's face it, money matters to everyone. But business ownership naturally exposes us to greater risks for experiencing fraud, which is why NAWBO and PNC feel so strongly about presenting this topic today. We'll have 2 question and answer sessions this morning, and some of our PNC experts will also be available after the event to help you get answers to any questions you may have. Each attendee will also receive a PDF document after the event with certification information and additional information that our expert speakers and panelists have graciously shared. We know you'll find the information presented during Money Matters very helpful, so let's get started. Our first speaker today is Paul Clark. Mr. Clark is a 37-year financial services veteran who joined PNC through its acquisition of National City Corporation in December of 2008. He joined the company in 1976 as a management trainee in consumer finance. Since that time, he has served a variety of capacities, including Executive Vice President of Retail Banking in Pennsylvania and President CEO of Michigan, Illinois. He also held the position of Executive Vice President of Institutional Asset Management and Chair of the Investment Management Company until his appointment as President of Northern Ohio Banking in 2004. Mr. Clark is active in a number of civic and business organizations, serving on the boards of directors of Baldwin-Wallace University, Cleveland Rock and Roll, Cuyahoga County Invest in Children, Greater Cleveland Partnership, Musical Arts Association, Cleveland Orchestra, Neighborhood Progress Incorporated, Playhouse Square Foundation, Team NEO, the United Way of Greater Cleveland, University Circle Incorporated, and University Hospitals Health System, Inc. Let's welcome Mr. Paul Clark.
Good morning. How's everybody? Sam, thanks for that introduction. I really appreciate that. I don't know if you've had a chance to kind of review Sam's biography, but every award you can possibly win from the American Family Insurance Company about sales, profitability, and service, Sam and her team that she leads has won. So congratulations to that. It's not just that, yep, but besides being president here, also works with Dress for Success, which is a a group a number of my colleagues at PNC have been working with, and Bad Girl Ventures, which is doing really exciting work with young entrepreneurs. So thanks for all that. And Barbara Daniel, Barbara, I always enjoy seeing you and meeting you, but again, the work that you've done and your story is inspirational. So I had a chance to read it again, and I just enjoy being with you. Congratulations on everything you've been able to achieve. Really appreciate that. A lot of great friends here. It's nice to see everybody. And we're really happy to be in this role of sponsor. We're really excited about this. This hopefully is the first of a lot of annual type things that we do with NAWBO, and to host events like this for really the entire business community. And I would also say, Barbara, thanks for being the media sponsor. The media sponsors make these things work, so thanks for that very, very much. But we're looking forward to doing more of these along the way. Great space to do it. Hopefully you had the tour. You probably heard a lot of the fun facts about the economic development catalyst that this facility is and will be. Some of our colleagues from PNC came in yesterday and needed to find hotel rooms last night, and that was a challenge. That's good. The hotel room bookings used to run about 5,000 to 6,000 ahead, and now they're running about 40,000 ahead. So when you see new hotels coming on stream, or you see really terrific renovations of some existing hotels, you really know why. The demand is there for them, in part because the capacity of this facility is sold out for the next year and a half or so at least. So it's really off to a really strong start and going to make a huge difference for us here in downtown Cleveland and Cleveland overall. I'm really glad you're here. I'm very proud to be here. You know, we've got 5,200 people that work for PNC in the greater Cleveland area. And I always say the best part of my job, besides working with them every day, is that I'm able to give their voice to the community. And I want to talk just for a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in the community. You know, like Sam and like Barbara, we try to broadly do our work throughout the community. We're of an opinion that the bank is only as good as the community that we serve. And because of that, I think banks have a particular responsibility and accountability to do spectacular work in the community. And the work I just want to highlight briefly this morning for you is the work we do with our program called Grow Up Great. Many of you may have heard about it. It started 9 years ago when our then CEO, Jim Rohr, asked the question, what if we put all the resources of the company kind of behind one effort? Could we move the needle on that effort? Could we make a real difference? Could we have impact? And we did a lot of surveys internally about, you know, what would our employees feel good about. Two themes resonated clearly and loudly, and that was children and education. Interestingly, at the same time, there was a number of longitudinal research studies that were being completed about the kind of investment value of a dollar invested into early childhood education, and 18 years later, you know, saves you somewhere between $20 to $30 in societal costs. So we had an opportunity to do something in that space. Corporations weren't doing anything at the time. We couldn't do it alone, so we partnered up with Sesame Workshops, which is the umbrella organization for Sesame Street and other things, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in Pittsburgh, which is called Neighborhood, can't remember the name of the company, Mr. Rogers in Pittsburgh. And they've helped us really grow this together. What started out as a 10-year, $150 million commitment has turned into a 20-year, $350 million commitment. And I'm hard-pressed to think of other corporations that have that long and that large of a commitment to any particular cause. So we're very, very proud of it. Locally here, it's been phenomenal. So our first efforts in Grow Up Great in Cleveland started in March of '09 with an initial $2 million grant to 4 arts organizations in the community. Since then, we've invested almost $4.5 million in early childhood education. And we're a bank, we measure everything, right? We've got grids that have red, green, and yellow, and it's better to be green than red. And we measure the heck out of Grow Up Great. Every year we have a third-party independent group survey the impact that the children, or the experience that the children are having, and is it getting better, data-driven, it's not anecdotal, and the results are off the charts. We've touched about 30,000 children, typically in the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. We've gotten to hundreds of teachers, hundreds of classrooms, have great partners that help us deliver this Grow Up Great program. So we're really, really proud of it, really, really pleased with the results, and look forward to working with many of you as we go forward in that effort. So just one kind of aspect of our community involvement I wanted to share this morning. But let me pivot a little bit from community work into the business work that we do in the community. I should add, too, back to the community, Grow Up Great's not the only thing we do. We do a lot relative to community development, economic development, arts and culture, health and human research, health and human services as well. A lot of work around college attainment. You know, the Grow Up Great is kind of a pre-K, a toddler to pre-K program. Well, you got to keep that going as they work through the pipeline of education. So education's been the focus of all our work that we've done in the community. But pivoting over to the business that we do, you know, when we do our business well, we get the resources to do the community work well. And this is not just about small business this morning, but just to highlight our small business effort. We have about 37,000 businesses that we bank in Greater Cleveland who have sales under $10 million. I think if you look at the bell curve, the top of that bell curve is probably $2 to $3 million, 5 employees or less. So arguably, you know, small and growing businesses. We'll add another 500 on a net basis, kind of 500 new names this year. And we've been, Elena Ray, who leads this effort, Elena and her team have been doing that the last several years. So it's a continued growing business for us as well. And today, you know, kind of pivot over to teeing up what we're doing today. Whether you're a small business or you're a Fortune 500 company, and we have everybody represented in the room today. We've got business owners, CFOs, controllers, and everyone in between. It doesn't matter what size your company is. The issues of fraud and risk management are as important to any size company because of the threat they provide. What I'm always struck by is the challenge of solving a problem when what you're trying to solve is an issue that has low frequency but potentially really high severity. So you think about Hurricane Katrina. Not likely you're going to have those frequently, but they're devastating. And fraud is often the same. You may or may not have an attack, you may or may not have issues, but what you have to plan for is the severity, not the frequency. And the severity can be high. I want to just relate a quick story to you. I think about it a lot, kind of the juxtaposition and the irony of events. Last September 27th, so 2012, we opened up at East 83rd Street and Carnegie Avenue something called the PNC Fairfax Connection. And it's a, excuse me, it's a community resource that hopefully helps redefine the relationship a bank has with a community and vice versa. So here we were making this $6 million investment in the Fairfax neighborhood, and it was all about people, and it was all about neighborhood, and it was all about connections. That was the very day that we suffered our first cyber attack by a religious extremist group who was upset at that video that had gotten out, went viral, that some interpreted as not being very favorable towards Islamic religious beliefs. Others had different takes on it. And it wasn't an attack that went into our systems and attacked the data that our clients have with us. But what they do is they clog up your ability to access our systems. And we're not alone. All the major banks had that issue. And I thought to myself, here we are. I'm driving down to 83rd and Carnegie to have this high-touch, local, really cool, hopefully, experience with a neighborhood, and we're at cyber war. I still can't get those two things, can't wrap my head around those two things happening at the same time, but they are. And they're happening with increasing frequency and certainly more and more severity. So we got a great group of people here on the panels to help think through that, hopefully prompt some questions that you might ask. and to share some information that will help all of you strengthen your own businesses when you get back to the office. Later today, Beth Marcello, my colleague, will be here closing up the day's events, and she'll provide an overview of our role with women business owners at that point. So I hope this morning's meaningful for you. I hope it's worthwhile. I hope it gives you some tools to use when you return to your business. I want to leave you with something, maybe a little bit different than you would have imagined a banker leaving the dais or the podium. But at your desk or at your table, we have this book. And this is Women Who Rock, Vision, Passion, Power. And this was the exhibit book that went to an exhibit that was at the Rock Hall about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And I just want to draw a couple stories from it. I want to talk about 3 stories from this book. 2 of the stories deal with persistence. I want to talk about persistence for a second. And then 1 story deals with connections, and they're all related and they're all true. If you're keeping score at home, on page 10, you'll see the write-up about Wanda Jackson. Talk about a woman ahead of her time. First hit came out in 1954. Think about the music, think about the world, the country, our society, the music business in 1954, very male-dominated. And she was truly a pioneer, a woman in a typical man's world at that point. And if you read through the bio, at the bottom, you'll see that in 2011, she released what I think is a great name of a record for someone with that tenure in the business. Let me put it that way. The party ain't over. That's a good tombstone thing. And she did it with Jack White of the White Stripes. Jack White has a number of bands, the Raconteurs, the White Stripes, and others. That's who she's working with, and she's been in this business since the early 1950s. She has persevered through a lot to have the type of musical body of work that is exhibited there on page 10. If you go over to page 58, you'll see Cyndi Lauper. The first thing to notice, she was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1953. She was born in June of 53. I was born in May, Brooklyn, New York, in May of 1953. I'd like to think we were buds. She moved to Queens shortly thereafter. Another story of persistence. So you read this, what's in the book here, and you'll read about the hits that she's had, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Time After Time, She-Bop, All Through the Night, True Colors. And then you read about the Emmy nominations, you read about the Grammy nominations. She's also won a Tony Award for her Broadway play, someone will remember the name, I can't remember it right now. Kinky Boots? Yeah, Kinky Boots, that she scored. And, again, incredible story of this body of work that she put together. But what's not in here is the fact that she left home at 16, dropped out of high school, ended up in Canada, ended up in New Hampshire and Vermont, working as a waitress in diners, basically. Restaurant would be an overstatement. She got into bad business deals with managers and agents and record companies. She filed bankruptcy to get out of those bad deals. And yet she persevered, got her GED, I think has since gone back to college, married, has a teenage child. So she persevered through all this to have this incredible body of work that you see on page 58. Another story of perseverance. Here's the connection story. When this exhibit came to the Rock Hall, a number of the artists came back to celebrate it and to perform. And at the time, and we were a sponsor of it, and I had an opportunity to go down into the basement of the Rock Hall, and I was doing a radio interview for National Public Radio for a show that they said would be on. I haven't heard about it yet. If you ever hear my voice on NPR talking about my mother and rock and roll, call me. In the room next to me was Wanda Jackson. She was there to perform. And who walks into that room? Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper has in her hand a Wanda Jackson record. And she said, "You must sign this for me, because when I was a little girl, I listened to you. And I kept telling my mother, when I grow up, I want to do what you do." So this incredible connection came together in person. I'm in tears, they're in tears, everybody's in tears. Terry Stewart was there, he's in tears. It was just a sweet moment of connection between two women who persevered. So why do I talk about this? Other than it's a great story, I think. I talk about it in the sense of, at PNC, in our heart, in our core, in our soul, in our DNA, that's what we're about. We're about perseverance, and we're about connections. And we're about helping you make all the connections you can possibly make at events like this and others. And it's all about our helping you persevere, our supporting you with our banking products, with our thoughts, with our friendship, with our support. It's all about helping you persevere. When we're at our best, we do that, and I want to leave you with a big thank you, because we only have the opportunity to do that because you give us that opportunity to have that discussion and be able to do that. So thanks for being here today. I think you're going to enjoy the topic, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to be important to your business. We really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. That was wonderful. Made me feel all warm and fuzzy. Great partners. All right, as we head on in our program, I'm going to introduce to you Debbie May. She's the owner of Wholesale Supplies Incorporated, Supplies Plus, sorry. In 1999, Wholesale Supplies Plus was established as a way to provide the public with affordable, professional, quality soap making, skincare, and candle making supplies. Wholesale Supplies Incorporated is a privately held corporation that currently stocks over 2,000 products that are packaged and ready to ship. They employ over 65 staff members and continue to help over 200,000 customers. Debbie is a recognized expert, mentor, and advocate to the handmade cosmetic industry. In March 2012, Debbie May spoke before the House Energy and Commerce Committee on the state of cosmetics and the potential impact proposed federal legislation that would have over 250,000 small handmade cosmetic companies contributing to the U.S. economy. Let's hear from Debbie May.
I'm a little bit shorter. Can you guys hear me? Yep, good. I want to take a moment to thank NAWBO and PNC for hosting this wonderful event. I have my tiger with me. A lot of people have asked. He normally sits on my desk and reminds me of where I've been, because growing a small business is often like holding the tail of a tiger, grabbing it, hanging on, and having no idea where you're going to go. So I share him with you today. At least that's what it's been like for me. I became a handmade soap maker 16 years ago, not by choice, but by necessity. At that time, I was a registered nurse in the ICU at the Cleveland Clinic. But on August 1st, 1996, I gave birth to my second daughter, who was diagnosed with cortical blindness and severe autism. The months that followed, I lost my job because of my daughter's around-the-clock medical care needs. Our bills became overwhelming. My husband, a Catholic high school teacher at Padua High School, and I were drowning in debt. Our secure, predictable, middle-class life were gone. I sought support through online forums and mothers facing similar challenges. Through one exchange, I was introduced to the art of making handmade soaps and lotions. I found a handcrafted product forum online, and these women taught me how to make products safely, how to comply with ingredient labeling laws, and answered all of my questions. I was amazed at how easy it was to make small batches of cosmetics in my own home. I began to give my products out to my friends and family. Before I knew it, they encouraged me to sell my products for profit. Although fearful, I took a deep breath and registered for a local high school craft show. People loved the products, and I went home with empty boxes and a cash box full of money. After that, I registered for every craft show I could find. Caring for my daughter was my first priority, but I had found a business that allowed me to do both. I landed my first wholesale account through a customer who owned a shop in California. He was delighted that I could make 10 bars of a custom soap in any combination, scent, or color, and ship him that order within 48 hours. At home, I built my business and it worked. I loved what I was doing, and most important, it saved my family from foreclosure and allowed us to start paying off the overwhelming medical bills. The following year, I began teaching adult classes on handcrafted soap and cosmetics. Families were financially hurting, and many were looking for a way to help make ends meet. In 1999, I founded Wholesale Supplies Plus. My goal was to teach others how to make their own handmade cosmetics and supply them with quality supplies that small micro businesses could afford to purchase. Today, Wholesale Supplies Plus is one of the leading ingredient suppliers to these small businesses, producing handmade soaps, lotions, bath salts, topical ointments. Since 2010, my company has serviced over 200,000 unique businesses in the United States alone. We're on target this year to exceed $15 million in sales and have 65 employees. Over the past 15 years, I've been busy grabbing that tail of the tiger, growing my business, and frankly, learning from the School of Hard Knocks. I very much today want to share with you those lessons that I've learned as they relate to fraud so that you don't repeat my business mistakes. I've always said the nicest employees can do the most out-of-character things when they are faced with financial disaster in their personal lives. I have unfortunately experienced fraud from employees. I've had employees dip their hand in the petty cash drawer just to take a little, but that adds up to hundreds. I have had employees undercharge customer orders, going out to the parking lot and taking a kickback from that customer, never noticing it in an audit and thinking it was a hand entry error. I've had employees tell me I owe them because they helped build the company. We hear a lot about credit card fraud in the news. Let me tell you, it's more real than I would like to admit. This year alone, my company is out over $20,000, thank God, not 200, due to credit card fraud. One little-known type of fraud is that when a customer orders and ships your box, they redirect the package, take notice of your shipper number, and then begin to put charges on your UPS or FedEx account. Unless you do a detailed audit, you will never find that they are actually funding their business on your shipper number. The last type of fraud I want to mention is probably what hurt me the most. When we were holding on to that tail of the tiger and just trying to get orders out, I hired a consultant that helped me manage the financial side of my business. Remember, I was a registered nurse who had no business background. I thought I was so smart to enter into a contract that was based only on increase in profits. The company was growing, and I thought it was great. I thought this person was just doing a bang-up job, and we were all going to make some money. Then 9/11 happened, and things started to slow significantly. I noticed that I was repeatedly being asked to draw on lines of credit to pay this consulting bill. After about 4 months, I decided to contact our accountant and do a secret audit. The result was devastating. I was out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've been frauded by a person that I trusted the most and knew every single nook and cranny of my business. In response to these types of fraud, I took action that you will all hear today from the experts on the panel. Most of all, I didn't give up. I still hold the tail of the tiger, and I'm proud to say that today I control it and it doesn't control me. With that, I would like to, that's it, thank you. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to introduce Barbara Daniel. Barbara is the publisher, owner, and editor of the Cleveland Women's Journal, East Edition, a print, digital, and mobile magazine that is informative, educational, and objective, targeting women in Northeast Ohio. Barbara made a career change in September 2004 when she purchased the magazine. She recognized the Cleveland Women's Journal gave her the opportunity to achieve her personal mission, to help other women and the community. The mission of the Cleveland Women's Journal is to empower women through knowledge. The magazine focuses on issues affecting women and families, including health and wellness, business and finance, home and garden, art and leisure, and community. Through the publication, she is able to reach a diversified audience of women throughout the Cuyahoga County, East Cuyahoga County. She is also able to help new and small business owners, as well as nonprofit organizations, particularly those that serve women. Before publishing, Barbara was in the financial services industry for 25 years. Barbara received the Valmark Security Award, Excellence and Exceptional Drive to Exceed Expectations, in 1994. During her last 4 years in the financial services business, Barbara established her company, Insurance Resources. Barbara was the third woman president of the National Association for Insurance and Financial Advisors. Please help me welcome Barbara Daniels. You want me to take it?
Thank you. Good morning. We're getting shorter as we get up here. Like Wanda Jackson, the party isn't over for me either. Because when I started the magazine here, I was 60. So it's never too late to make a change. My party still isn't over. If I could call Michael and Chrissy to come on up while I read your bios. Michael and Chrissy. Michael. Last time I introduced a panel, somebody was in the bathroom. And of course, we didn't tell the audience. Special Agent Michael Maltby, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, is a 25-year veteran of the FBI. He has held assignments in Denver, Colorado, Monterey, California, Washington, D.C., and of course, Cleveland. He began his career in the 1980s by addressing financial institution fraud. He obtained several convictions in cases associated with the failure of commercial banks and thrift institutions. Special Agent Maltby was promoted to supervisor in the FBI's Counterterrorism Division in 1999, where he directed several investigative programs pertaining to radical Islamic fundamentalism and state-sponsored espionage. In 2002, he transferred to Cleveland to oversee the FBI's counterterrorism program and the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Northern Ohio. Under his direction, Cleveland achieved numerous convictions of persons associated with terror groups and established an efficient system of coordination and sharing of counterterrorism information among Northern Ohio law enforcement agencies. In his current position, he provides training to address the need for protection of intellectual property and seeks to raise the awareness of threats from foreign intelligence services and other security risks to U.S. businesses. Our other expert panelist is Chrissy Powers, Managing Member, PDI Forensics. Chrissy has assisted with investigations involving the diversion of corporate assets and other fraud-related cases. She has also worked with clients to strengthen internal control and management system to deter fraudulent activity and asset diversions. Chrissy has experience in the area of litigation support engagements, which include fraud examination and investigation, forensic accounting and record reconstruction, damage and claims analysis and documentation, and marital dissolution matters. She has assisted in the valuation of closely held business enterprises for purposes of marital dissolution and purchase or sale. We're going to start with Mike.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you all for being here this morning. And it's really great to be here. When Liz Victor from PNC contacted me and asked me if I'd want to talk about how to protect your financial assets, I was thinking, that's great, because it takes me back to what I started my FBI career doing, which was investigating various types of frauds. So in talking through this portion of the presentation, it was determined that I would give sort of a global overview of fraud and kind of what happens, and I'm going to touch a little bit on what goes inside the mind of the person that's trying to get inside your pocket, okay? And then Chrissy, having heard a little bit of preview of what she's got some great things to share with you on some specifics that you can take a look at. So whenever you think of the FBI, you think probably in terms of investigators doing criminal investigations, right? We also do counterintelligence and trying to prevent the loss of secret information from various corners of the U.S. government. But one of the things we want to do is, and which we are doing, is working on trying to prevent the loss of things from businesses that bring value to the business. So what I do is I work a lot with larger organizations and encourage businesses to do things to protect their intellectual property, okay? There are a lot of companies and entities from foreign lands that are trying to get the great ideas here within the United States so they can catch up technologically, both on an economic level and for national security defense purposes. But one thing we also want to do is to provide some clues and some training, some insight as to what small businesses can do to keep that money in your pocket. And so we just heard a very compelling story of someone who just worked really hard to develop a business from just what I think you thought was a small idea, Debbie, at one time. And wow, this thing really blossomed. And before you know it, you got a very profitable business. And as she noted, when somebody has a great idea, a great business, somebody wants to get a piece of that action, right? Okay. So you guys have had some coffee. Let me start with a little audience participation point here. I've got a question for you. There's 4 possible answers. So from these 4 possible answers, what do you think is the greatest risk to your business? Okay? Number 1, an internet fraud scheme. Number 2, an employee. Number 3, identity theft. Or number 4, a cyber penetration of your information system. Employee? Okay. And that's what the FBI would say. We would say the insider is probably, not always, but is probably going to be your biggest threat, okay? We see that with large businesses. If you want to hit the Google box, pull up DuPont. We got a case pending right now, I think out in our San Francisco field office. Longtime employees, engineers, 30 years plus, at least 3 of them that I know of, that sold out, some great intellectual property to a front company operated by a Chinese state-owned country, okay? 30 years. Can you trust somebody that's worked for you for 30 years? Okay? Sometimes you can, but you just don't know if you can, okay? So I think most people, from what I've seen, we are predisposed to want to believe the people that are close to us, right? We want to believe our family members, okay? Have we ever had people in families that sell us out or do us wrong in some case, okay? Just wait for an inheritance issue to come up and see how that works out, all right? Employees, we all know the answer there. Your close friends, your hired professionals, all right? Probably in many cases you can, but you just don't know. You just don't know. We know today that there are a lot of financial pressures, and there are many things that motivate people, sometimes to do the right thing, but sometimes to do the wrong thing. I like to do a wide array of reading, and what I've noticed is that some of our most famous writers have very keen insight into human nature. Ernest Hemingway once said, "The human being's default is self-deception." Okay? It's not a very flattering thing to think about when you apply it to yourself. Maybe to that guy that works in the pod next to you, but not to yourself. Somebody else, Somerset Maugham, a famous British author, he said, "I take no one at face value," and that having come after several years of writing books and observing people. I take no one at face value. So here's some things that I have seen during my career in the FBI. Believe it or not, this may be a shocker, some people are very good at lying. Not everybody is good at lying, but some people are very good at lying. And if they're just doing something to rip you off, They got a little game going on up here. It's the R word. It's called rationalization. Okay? I helped build your business. Okay? Really? Okay. You exchanged, time on the job for a paycheck. That's really what's going on there. There are other things out there that probably most of us in this room just don't understand. They're called personality disorders or other psychological things. If you want to have a fascinating read or study, take a look at sociopathy. Okay, you think of a sociopath, you think of Freddy Krueger, right? Friday the 13th. Okay, but there's a sliding scale of sociopathy, and there's a lot of folks that are just very good, again, at lying. And they do that as though they have no conscience, and some experts in the area of mental health would tell you it's because they have no conscience. Okay, let me give you a couple of examples. One of the first cases I had as a new agent in Colorado Springs within the Denver division of the FBI was a fraud case. It was an advance fee scheme, and this guy, without going into all the details, he took $30,000 to $40,000 from at least 30 people. Okay, and not many of these people could afford to give up money in the late 80s at that time. And so this guy, I did have one interview with the guy, had absolutely no problem with what he did, okay? On the flip side, on the victim side, okay, and some of the victims probably come from the demographics that people in this audience represent. I had one victim couple during this interview. They were still, believe it or not, holding out hope that this investment scheme, we'll call it, was actually still going to come through, okay? Was still going to come through. FBI standing right before him, trying to get the details of the case. Another one was probably an embezzlement case, which could be quite similar to what many of you as small business owners might face. It was at a bank. A clerical employee found a way to code accounting entries such that a portion of deposits every so often, maybe 2-3 times a week, would be diverted into her personal bank account, okay? Internal controls finally, 1 year later at the bank, caught up with her, and she had skimmed off maybe $52,000 over the course of a year, so about $1,000 a week. Motivation, I think she just liked to play, she liked to go out party, and she just wanted a little bit of extra money. When I sat down and interviewed this young lady in her mid-20s, okay, you know what her concern was? Was she sorry? She expressed absolutely zero regret. She was only concerned that her father, who was a retired colonel in the U.S. Army, and her fiance would find out about what she did. She was concerned about number one only, okay? So, again, this is not a shocker. A lot of people out there are willing to get into your pocket. Some people will have a conscience, but there are others who don't have a conscience, okay? Audience participation time again. Fraudsters without a conscience. Any names come to mind? Maybe famous cases, big cases, Wall Street type cases? Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff, okay? Anybody ever remember some of the interviews, some of the feedback from his victims? The shock that they expressed? Okay? I can't believe this guy who was in my synagogue, with whom I trusted my money, would do this to me. Okay? In other words, he was very close to these guys. Same religion, same social network to some degree, okay? No conscience. Now, am I saying that everybody that rips you off is a sociopath? No, I'm not saying that. But you don't know who's out there. You just don't know. So because of the need for accountability, we have people like accountants and other people skilled in the area of business to provide some oversight and some systems. One of the things that the FBI has done to try to provide protection and assistance to business processes is something that we call a counterintelligence vulnerabilities assessment. This was designed for larger businesses, but I went through that, even though we're talking largely to small business, and there's a section here which it's the elements of the insider threat. And this document would be available, I think, through the organizers of the event for those that may have an interest in taking a look at this. There could be some useful elements to it. So one of the things is to bear in mind who are the high-value employees of your company, okay? You want to make sure they have good training as to what the points of fraud or points of risk operating in your business are. You also want to make sure that these high-value employees, because by definition, if they go bad on you, they can create a lot of trouble for your business, okay? So you want to make sure that there are some controls in place for those high-value employees. So that's one thing, identifying your high-value employees, getting them proper training, proper oversight, proper scrutiny. But another category here that we have identified would be categories of conduct that could be exploitable for the purpose of coercion. And you could apply that to your business by having this be an indicator that something could be amiss. One of the things is just quite simply a financial anomaly. Does your employee suddenly exhibit an unexplained rise in wealth? Are they suddenly living a little bit better, taking nicer vacations? Maybe they've purchased a nicer car. Okay, where did the money come from? That's a great question. Did the spouse get a better job, or is there something else afoot? Okay, another one would be disciplinary issues. If you've got somebody that you're having trouble with within the office, okay, if they know they're on the bubble, that they could be losing their job, that could be an indicator that you might want to have a closer look at this person's activity, see where they're going within the company electronic data system, maybe do some electronic audits to see what they're accessing. If they have access to your bank records, absolutely make sure you take a regular look at your bank account online, because those employees could be trying to pave the way for not having the job. They could be making preparations. And then finally would be marked changes in behavior. Okay, do you have somebody who's going through a life event? Okay, whatever that could be. Something within the family or a health issue. That doesn't mean that they're going to go bad, but just raise your awareness, okay? Talk to the person. Keep them close at hand. You just don't want to have a situation where you're letting that go and then they end up doing something that you don't expect. Okay, let me move on to the next point here. So relative to concerns for your business and for your employees, what are some of the things beyond the insider threat that you want to be aware of? Okay, malware. Does anybody not have a concern for having malicious software coming into your business computer systems? No, everybody knows about that. The question is, what is the attack vector for these malicious code coming in? Okay, I heard an example earlier this year of a CFO who had to do some work on a Saturday morning, hadn't had a whole lot of family time with his young son, 8 or 10 years of age, brought the kid in with him. What's the kid going to do for 4 or 5 hours? So he says, Johnny, look, why don't you bring, something so you can play, a video game on my computer. So Johnny downloads some gaming programs onto a thumb drive, comes in, plugs it into Dad's hard drive. Dad works, Johnny plays games. Guess what happened over the next week or two? Okay, exfiltration of money from the company's financial accounts. How did that happen? Okay, well, keylogger software got downloaded in the company's system, and namely on the CFO's hard drive where he works, and it came from the gaming software. So here's a question. What do you do with your business devices, with your business computers? Do you double time those for personal uses along with you're doing your normal business? Okay, you're really taking a risk. Here's another example. An individual last year was terminated by a company here in Northern Ohio because he was using his company-owned laptop to surf porn sites at home at night. Okay? So what happened was I'm going to call this high-speed malware that allows for cyber penetrations from foreign intelligence services was dropped onto his laptop from this pornographic website, okay? He comes into the office, networks that laptop with a company system, and bingo, you've got a penetration, a cyber penetration with a company network, okay? Hate to say this, I know we're all adults, But as business owners, you have the right to tell your people what they can and cannot do with your computers. You have the right to tell your people whether they can bring in personal devices and network with your company system, okay? There's a website called the SANS Institute, S-A-N-S. Great place. It's really way up there, technically speaking. There's a lot of information, newsletters and white papers and so forth. And I found one earlier this week on small business banking, for instance. So there's a lot of great resources out there. You ought to make yourselves familiar with this. Again, some of this might be beyond someone who's not, from the geek area of our economy, but some very interesting things for you to consider. Okay, so be careful what you do with your devices. Spoofed sites. Anybody know what a spoof site is? Okay, I understand that this is done to try to get into your bank accounts a lot. You receive an email. It looks like it's an email from your bank, let's say the ABC Bank. We're having security concerns, and they may even say we had a penetration. We want to validate your identifying information. So just to make sure it works, please click on the link below. First clue that you got a problem here, okay? You go to that link, and guess what? It looks just like the ABC Bank's website, but it's not. There's something just a little bit different. There might be one digit, maybe an L where they use a 1 in the name, but they've copied the bank's website page. And they say, please enter your username and password just so we can validate that you still have access to your bank account. Okay, you know what you're doing? You're giving them the keys to your financial kingdom. Okay, don't do that. Don't do that. I don't think banks ever give you a call and say, please validate your authorization information. Or they don't send you an email and say, please go to this website. Okay, you need to initiate that. Am I misspeaking here, PNC? Okay, okay. Okay, those things happen, and they happen a lot. What about working from cafes, Starbucks, Pete's, Panera Bread, shoulder surfing? Okay, I saw somebody in the cafe. He was angled, so he had his screen of his laptop toward the wall. I thought, that's great. Okay, you don't want people looking over your shoulder, seeing what you're doing. Anybody use Firefox browser? Ever heard of Fire Sheep? Okay, if you're in a place like Panera or Starbucks where you have free internet access, okay, there's I guess it's associated with the Firefox browser. If you use Firefox Sheep in one of these areas, you can go into Firefox Sheep, and any unencrypted cookies being used to access certain websites can be viewed by somebody using Fire Sheep, okay, and they can see where you're going, they can see what you're doing, okay? Hit the Google box. Take a look at Fire Sheep and get the details on what could happen if you're surfing the web from a public internet space. Passwords. Okay, I know this is basic stuff, but guess what? Okay, I've talked to 2 people in organizations this year, okay, organizations that are way up here in revenue generation, and upper echelon executives have had personally identifiable information compromised. One of them had a smartphone stolen, okay? So let me talk a little bit about passwords. First of all, smartphones. If you're using a smartphone, and I know a lot of people do, please have one of these passwords, or sometimes it's just a 4-digit code before you can open up and use the phone for anywhere from making a call to checking your email to surfing the web. You got to do that. Okay, there was an executive that lost his phone overseas. Someone got that phone. I'm sure they read his email. They saw what was going on that week within the company, and they sent an email to somebody within Treasury or the financial network of the company, and they got somebody thinking they were getting a message from the boss to wire transfer a nice, tidy sum of money to another bank. Okay? Didn't have to happen. It didn't have to happen. Number one, you can try to hang on to your phone, okay? But I've got a daughter who's 22, and I know what happens with those phones. But password protect that thing. You gotta do that, okay? You're just asking for trouble, especially if that phone is hooked into not only your personal email network, but the company's email network, okay? Passwords. Here's what I read today about passwords from somebody in the cyber world. Passwords. It's one of the steps that most users refuse to engage in is to select a good, strong password and to change it often. Okay? When's the last time you changed your bank's password? I mean, just no hands. Just ask yourself. Okay? And do you have the same password at the ABC Bank as you do to, you know, all these other places you go to? Email. Maybe you've got a brokerage account, okay? That's not a good thing. If one password gets compromised, they've got access to all kinds of other stuff, all right? What do you do to develop a good password? Okay, some say use pass phrases, all right? One example could be, you know, my dog chases cats, all right? Okay, instead of the O for dog, you make it a 0. Instead of the A for cat, you use the digit 4. You might want to capitalize each letter in that phrase. Maybe for the C, you change it to a K. You get the word, you get the idea, okay? Here's something you can do to get some good ideas on how you can strengthen your password. Go to WikiHow and look for create a password you can remember, okay? Very, very important. You want to protect your personal identification. Another person who is a high net worth individual, not too long ago, I know this person has been under attack. Somebody out there has got a hold of at least a portion of his personally identifiable information. And this entity, I don't know if it's a person or a cadre of people, using a number of techniques, have come really close to sending money to foreign countries from his bank account here in the greater Cleveland area, have also come very, very close to getting into a brokerage account. So this guy is really targeted, okay? Some of these high net worth individuals, if they work for public companies, publicly traded companies, you can see what they make, all right? It's unfortunate, but so just in the event you know somebody, if you've got a client that's in that situation, man, drill down on the basics. Don't just tell them how you can make help them with a return on their assets. You want to have make sure they have a return of their assets year after year after year. And one way to do that is to protect access to your accounts. One last thing before I turn this over to Chrissy, challenge questions. Are the answers to your challenge questions somewhere out there on the internet? Okay? What are some of the challenge questions that you see at the website you go to? What was that? Your father's name? Okay, your father's first name. Somebody else?
Where'd you go to high school?
Where did you go to high school? Okay. Mother's maiden name? Okay. Let's look at our demographics here, okay? Just because of where some of us are along the path of life, okay? Some of us have lost our parents, right? What happens when you lose a loved one? Uh-huh. Okay? So if somebody's got 1 or 2 pieces of your PII, okay, they Google your name, survivors of Mary Smith are, guess what? They've got your father's name, they've got your mother's maiden name, okay? If you want to use that as a challenge question, do you have to put your mother's maiden name? No, you don't. It can be anything you want. All right? It can be anything you want. You want to make it hard for the thieves out there. What's an example from the last election cycle of somebody that had, let's say, their Yahoo email account hacked? Sarah Palin, okay, from Wasilla, Alaska, okay. Where did you and your husband meet? That was all out, all over the internet. Wasilla High School, okay. What's the zip code from your hometown? I think there's 1 or 2 zip codes for Wasilla. How difficult is it to track that down, okay? I think it took the guy that hacked her email account 5 minutes, 30 minutes, okay? That was pretty easy. Okay, make getting into your email accounts, bank accounts, something that's hard to do. Okay. That's basically all I have right now. I hope I've given you some thoughts to consider. I've worked bank cases, and unfortunately, back in the 1980s, some of the bank cases were perpetrated by insiders, bankers that had problems, bankers that owned the banks, if you can believe that. And so, you know what? If you've got a business, just beware that you got to put some great systems in place. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chrissy, because I know she's got some great ideas on how to do just that.
Thank you, Mike. Well, first I'd like to say this fraud that we're talking about is considered occupational fraud. So this is snakes in suits when employees go to work. People today are under a great amount of financial pressure. And for your employees to decide to steal and commit fraud, there's 3 things that they must do. As a certified fraud examiner, we label this the fraud triangle, so we can all visualize our fraud triangle. The 3 legs of that triangle are opportunity, rationalization, and financial pressure. So we're going to bring this into perspective with today's economy. A lot of people have said that we're in a financial downturn, at least within the last couple years. I'm beginning to think that that's coming around and things are looking up. I know my business is extremely, extremely busy right now. So if we apply that to today's economy, the pressures are there because all of your employees have an increase in financial strain. Opportunities are there. Workforce was cut. Company expenditures were reduced. How many of you got raises over the last 3 or 4 years? Not many. I hear some snickering in the front row. So that means a reduction in internal controls. Fewer proactive fraud prevention measures are in place. And these employees are rationalizing it, which is the 3rd leg of the fraud triangle. They hear bad financial news of companies closing, people being laid off, others filing bankruptcy, mounting feelings of helplessness, pessimism, and isolation. And this allows the employee to rationalize what was a previously unthinkable act. Something that your trusted employee who's been with you for 25 years might not have done 20 years ago. Guys in the back, my audio, do you have a mic? Because I'm going to walk through the audience. We're going to do a little scenario here. So if you could grab that, I'm going to come towards you. We have $500,000 cash left on the desk. There is no one left in the building for the day. They've all gone home. You're staying working late. Would you take it? Okay, Robert says no. All right. Right, Robert? Okay, so I'm going to add some pressure. You're finding out that your son's going to college. We need at least $80,000 this year. You're losing your job. Nick, would you take it?
Honestly, no.
Nick says no. All right. So we're losing our job. We got $500,000 cash, no cameras. You can get out of the building, no questions asked. They're not going to know who did this. Your son's going to college. You need the money for tuition, and your significant other is dying. You need the money to go to the Cleveland Clinic to pay for the medical procedure. Donna, would you take it?
No.
Donna says no. Okay. So we're going to continue to add financial pressure. Sooner or later, someone is going to break down and take it. should have went to Robert last. I mean, he's going to take it right off the get-go. So what I'm trying to show here is that these employees, enough pressure, the opportunity, because someone accidentally leaves something laying around like your check stock. Check stock needs to be locked up with signature stamps. I can't tell you how many organizations that I go into where that's left unlocked. And for the bankers in the room, a lot of times the banks are going to pay out on this. The reason being is you have a fiduciary duty as the business owner to put proper controls in place. By not locking that check stock up, you're making yourself vulnerable, and it is not the bank's responsibility. How many of you in here reconcile your bank statements within 30 days of receiving them? All right, how many of you don't? Okay, guys, that needs to be top priority. If you're not using positive pay or reverse positive pay, negative pay, you've got checks that can be slipping through. If you don't have the time, which is what I hear from most business owners, here's what you need to do. Have a duplicate statement mailed to your home. Guys, look at it while you're watching the football game on Sunday and question just a few of those checks to make your employees think somebody is watching. If you still don't have time for that, have the duplicate statement mailed to your outside accountant and let someone within their organization look it over. They'll become familiar with your vendors, and then they can call you and say, I have a question about a couple of vendors, and then ask those individuals in that department. That makes them think somebody is watching. They're going to think twice before they steal. That's the whole thing. We cannot trust everybody. Let's take a minute and think about your profit and loss statement. You know what your revenue number is? 5% of that is lost on an annual basis to fraud. Do the math. Small organizations, can you afford to lose that, have it walk out your front door every year? It can be detrimental. So, small organizations with 100 employees or less are losing per scheme $150,000, and I'm going to round here. Can you afford to lose, if you're with less than 100 employees, $150,000? On average, it's 2 years before a fraud is caught. So that scheme lasts 2 years before it's caught. Does anyone in here have dishonest employee coverage or a fidelity bond in place in case your employee steals, that you can recoup those losses? I bet you most of you don't. And I bet you if you do, your coverage isn't adequate. I just worked within the last year and a half a dental practice that we had fraud occur over a 5-year period. They lost $1 million, is my magic number, if you will. Well, we thought we were good because she had dishonest employee coverage until I pulled the policy. $10,000. The dishonest employee coverage covered $10,000. Anyone want to guess what my fees were? Just the accounting side of things. Over $100,000 to do my side of the investigation. Double that for legal fees. So we're out the $1 million. We're out $100,000 for accounting. We're out $200,000 for legal fees. Is that where you want your company to be? These frauds can bankrupt you. And for the bankers in the room, if I'm a victim to fraud, you're the first one that's going to feel the effect because I'm not going to pay my line of credit off. I'm not going to pay my note. The bank is going to be the one that feels the repercussions of it. So you don't want to have to walk up to your boss and tell them that you have a client that this happened to. We want to talk fraud by industries. Let's see. The construction industry, on average, loses $300,000 per occurrence. I'm going to try to hit the main ones of who I think is in the room. Healthcare, $200,000. Manufacturing, $200,000. Gas and oil, we've got the shell boom going on in Northeast Ohio. They're averaging $250,000 per incident. This can be devastating to organizations. Devastating. And I cannot tell you how many times that I hear business owners say, that's not going to happen to me. I trust my employees. Or the real kicker for the CPAs here, my financial statements are audited. Sorry, folks, an audit does not mean that they're looking for fraud. We have SAS 99 in place where we have to consider if fraud should be occurring, and we're supposed to put on our little thinking caps and think like a fraudster. But most of your CPAs were not trained, even in college, to look for fraud. Fraud in the news and the CPAs being trained on that is relatively new. Or I also will hear the fact that, I'm looking at everything. I know that's not possible. We're all too busy day in and day out. We can't look at everything. There's no way. Let's look at public, private, and non-for-profit, which I think most of us in the room are probably private companies. Private companies, on average, lose $200,000 per occurrence. Non-for-profits, about $100,000. So, anyone in here have fire insurance on their company? Anybody that owns a building is going to raise their hand. That's why we should have fraud insurance, because you don't know when it's going to happen. You should be putting proactive measures in place to make sure you're not going to be a victim rather than reacting. Because when you're reacting, it's costing you more money in the long run. And I'm here to tell you, this is what I do day in and day out. I'm in the trenches. And these fraudsters, the ones that I see in the small businesses, they're not that smart. It's very obvious. And unfortunately, the business owners are like ostriches. They have their heads in the sand. And I don't want that to happen to you. It goes from companies with one employee up to millions of employees. It's in every industry. It's in every city. I've been in Columbus, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Miami, Florida. I even almost had to go to the Dominican Republic for a company that had ties out of Florida. It is everywhere, and no one is above it happening to them. Now, all of you could take deterrence methods back to your organizations and put them in place, and there's still no 100% way to make sure that fraud does not occur. Because these criminals, and that's what they are, they're criminals, but they look like you and me in suits, because this is white-collar crime. There's no guns, there's no bloodshed. It's white-collar crime. I can tell you, I'm going to pick on you, Matthew, send you to the local community college to get an accounting background. That's the best way if you want to be a crook, because you're going to do the least amount of time in jail, because it's a white-collar crime. Get your accounting degree, go on down to Staples for $19.99. We can get a package that allows you to write checks. You get one good check, whether you overpay on an account and let them refund you the $20 that you've overpaid. We've got their routing number and their account number, and we're good to go, Matthew. We get a hotel room. We set this software up on the laptop. We put in the routing and account number. We pick a day. Just from talking to a few employees around the water cooler or hear them at the coffee shop over lunch, we find out that Friday's payday, so we have these checks good to go, and we hit it after 5 o'clock on Thursday down at the bank, and those checks are going to clear first, and if they don't have positive pay or negative pay, those are going to clear. We even had a ring down in Columbus where the perpetrators were targeting high school students that worked at McDonald's, getting their paychecks. They paid them double for what the paycheck was so they could get the routing number and account number and make their fraudulent checks to drain the accounts. This could happen to you. The most common type of fraud that I see is the misappropriation of assets. And again, these fraudsters are not smart. They're skimming from the cash that's coming in, so that could be your individual opening the mail. I see them where they've got the company credit card, which is just another very easy way to do things, where they're putting personal expenses straight on the credit card. And if somebody would take the time to review the credit card, it will be caught that Victoria's Secrets should not be on the credit card. They're very, very straightforward about it. So let's talk about, what does your typical fraudster look like within your organization? Uh-oh, Mike. They're pointing at you. Yeah? I'm just making sure that we're going to be good on time here. All right. Your average fraudster is a male between the ages of 36 and 40, and they've been with the company 1 to 5 years. Do you think I might have my average fraudster right here? We got our suit on. James, sorry to pick on you. All right, James, so if you're stealing from my company, what do you think the average male fraudster does with the funds that he steals?
Gambles.
Ding, 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 that's one of them. Our male fraudsters normally spend their ill-gotten gains on gambling, mistresses, and drugs. Oh, yeah, he's happy now. Until Mike comes looking for you. All right, ladies, we do have lady fraudsters out there. They're not as prevalent, but in the non-for-profit world, my experience has been it's generally a female, because a lot of times your executive directors are females. So I'm going to pick on you. What do you think the women are using their funds for that they're stealing?
Linda says purses. I don't know. Drugs, boys in... Gee, that's a really good question.
Hey, I asked the question. Generally, the ladies are a little bit more sincere and intimate, so they're using it for family purposes. A sick spouse or a sick child, something family-oriented. So again, you know, paying attention to detail within your organization, knowing what's going on, it's out there. The red flags are there, it's just you've got to pick up on it. So these are things to consider. And the common thing that I hear of when all of a sudden James has all this extra money and maybe somebody's kind of asking the question, we generally hear that he inherited it, that grandma died. Those are certain things that you can kind of check records to see if a family member has passed away. So you can do a little bit of detective work on your own as well. Let's see. Payroll schemes have been huge lately. In the medical industry, I see office managers having control of everything. Some of them just automatically increase their pay, and they do not have the right authority to do that, and that's getting through. What is very unique about payroll schemes is payroll is set up to disperse funds, which is what we're doing when we're stealing, and you have funds going out, so it does not seem like there would be a problem. Mischaracterizing expenses, just plain out using company funds to pay for personal funds. I've had companies where, the gentleman writes the checks, he's paying for his personal vehicle, he's paying for his mistress's apartment, golfing trips, vacations, it's there, but nobody's looking. So please open your eyes and take the time and look. All right, I want to do my little survey, and I know that my statistics aren't old, but it helps to put things in perspective. So if I can get everyone to stand up. Mr. Kessler did a survey. And these statistics, like I said, are a little old, but it helps to put things in perspective. His survey showed that 66% of your employees will steal if they see others do so without any consequences. That 66% will steal. All right. Everyone can sit down except for the back 5 tables. 2, 3, 4. I need one more to stay standing. Let's have you guys stay standing. All right. 21% of your employees are honest, and they will never steal, not even if the $500,000 is on the table and that. They will never steal. Only 21%. All right, you guys can sit down. And you guys over in the corner can sit down. And Robert, your table can sit down as well. Okay. 13% of your employees will steal, regardless of whatever type of deterrence methods you put in place. Cameras, padded locks, security systems, they're going to find a way around it. They're going to change with technology. These right here are our bad apples in the group. So you guys better check their pockets at the end of the day. All right, thanks guys, you guys can sit down. So the whole thing is, let's keep the bad apples out of the organization. Don't let them in the door. We know that our employees can also be our best line of defense. They hear people talking around the water cooler. They know what's going on in other employees' financial lives. So make sure you have means for your employees to communicate to you if they suspect that fraud is going on. There's fraud hotlines out there that you can subscribe to. You can have, boxes in discrete places. Make sure your employees know that you have an open door policy. There's my 10 tips, if you will, in the material that you'll be given of simple things to put in place to help deter fraud within your organization. Background checks. There's different levels of background checks that can be done, criminal and civil. But if you're giving someone access to your checking accounts, your investment accounts, high dollar inventory, I would highly suggest spending the money to run those background checks. The problem is the organizations that do not prosecute when they find someone who has committed fraud. And there's a lot of them. On a personal level, I probably have less than 10% of the cases that I work that get prosecuted. The owners are embarrassed that it happened to them. Their non-for-profits are one very big group that tends to not prosecute because when that hits the news, their donors tend to not donate because those previous funds didn't go towards their purpose. I understand being in those positions, but there's media out there that you can work with, PR firms that can help you put positive spins on that if you have that concern and you're moving in the direction of prosecuting. But by not prosecuting, people like myself, I will go into an organization, we'll find out that Mary stole the funds, I'll work with HR to properly make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed so that they can terminate the suspect. She goes down the street for another non-for-profit, goes in, and she's going to commit the same crime and start all over again. This is a big epidemic, and within the last 5 years, there's a lot more business owners that have found fraud and brought it to the surface because purse strings were tightened up with the economy. People were scrutinizing the financial statements. It's out there, folks. It's happening everywhere. Please don't be one of the victims that I deal with day in and day out. You've got to keep your head out of the sand. You've got to make your employees aware that you're paying attention and you know what's going on. And we all have a job to do, and we're all in business to make money, but ask for help. Ask for help from your outside accountants. Ask for help from another individual that could come in periodically and do checks. Never, ever trust someone with everything. Be skeptical. My poor children are never going to be able to get away with anything because I've been through investigative techniques and I question and check everything. My husband, he has to have a receipt for everything. That's the accountant in me to make sure everything balances in my checkbook. Audit and verify. That doesn't mean you have to have outside accountants to do it, but somebody needs to be watching. By making them think that someone is watching day in and day out, they're going to think twice before they think about stealing from you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara. We should be about. Thank you.
All I can say is I'm glad they're on our side because they know all the tricks of the trade. All right, we're going to open up for questions from the audience. Sam has a microphone out there, so don't be shy. We've got a few minutes here to address our experts. Thank you, and thank you, Chrissy and Mike, for your presentations. We're going to ask you to stay on the panel. We're going to bring up our new panel members, Peggy Hart, Jim Nowak. If you could please come up, have a seat. Okay, Peggy. Peggy Hart is Vice President, Treasury Management Sales Officer, PNC Bank. Peggy brings 25 years of banking experience and in-depth knowledge about risk management. With her expertise in risk management, she educates customers about the latest fraud trends and statistics. More importantly, she equips customers to protect their business accounts from unauthorized transactions through bank solutions. In addition, she shares industry best practices to help customers mitigate risk through internal controls and segregation of duties. And Jim Nowak, Vice President, Market Manager, PNC Merchant Services, Northern Ohio, Erie, and Youngstown. Jim works with 2 teams of account executives to deliver payment processing, fraud protection, and marketing programs to PNC's business banking customers. He has been with PNC for 4 years and in the payment processing line of business for 6 of his 16 years in banking. As a previous business owner, Jim and his team take great pride in consulting with business owners to grow their customer base, increase revenue, and ensure that their payment processing is secure and efficient. This is going to be a roundtable discussion, and that's why we've asked Chrissy and Mike to stay on board here. We want everyone on the panel to be able to contribute to our comments. Peggy, how much fraud on business accounts is committed annually?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. It is, like Chrissy has addressed before, it is something that is actually growing and growing. If you take about 5% of your occupational or the revenues from your business, 5% of that is usually what is committed under occupational fraud. If we look at our 2011 gross world product, that's $3.5 trillion in fraud committed.
Wow. Jim, where does the majority of fraud take place in the credit card processing industry?
Interestingly, you see in the news all the headlines for TJ Maxx or Michaels or Sony because they're very exciting stories when you hear about corporate fraud. But the majority of fraud takes place in the small business sector. More than 80% of fraud takes place in the small business sector of what Visa, MasterCard, and American Express would qualify as level 4 merchants that process less than 20,000 internet transactions a year or less than 100,000 transactions of face-to-face business. And the hackers know this, and they know that these folks don't have the resources to protect themselves from fraud. Obviously, a Sony or a TJ Maxx or a Michaels has the resources to protect themselves, but a small business that's maybe 1 or 2 employees and sales under $1 million a year, they're not spending time in protecting themselves. So that's where the majority of the fraud takes place.
Peggy, how does the bank partner with business owners to protect against fraudulent activity?
Well, the bank we infuse risk management with every cash flow conversation that we actually have with our clients. We sit down with them, we talk about everything that occurs in their business from beginning to end as far as payments are concerned, payments, vehicles, and receivables. and who touches the funds, what is going on in regards to, do you have separation of duties? We try to educate our clients, and we have many checks and balances that we like to partner with our clients to help infuse into their business so that they can feel in control and make sure that they have all these different layers of protection.
Jim, what are the most common types of fraud for a small business?
I'll categorize them in two different areas. As a small business owner or a controller or, a CPA or anybody who accepts any type of payments, there's a couple of ways that people have to look at it. On one side of it, you have to concern yourself with customers presenting to you fraudulent cards. That's one entity. That loss is typically going to be smaller. It may be somebody buying something on a card they bought on the internet or using a family member's card, and they're going to try and get services from you that could be maybe a one-time hit or a couple times till somebody catches them. Those losses could be hundreds or thousands of dollars, but usually controllable. The other category of fraud that's really big is when somebody's actually hacking into your business, or somebody, as we've stated today, employees working in your business trying to gather credit card information to sell for or use for their own gain. And there's a couple of kind of catch terms that we talk about a lot in the payments industry when we're talking about those types of fraud. One of them is called packet sniffing. I'm not really sure why they call it, but it's really fun to remember. Packet sniffing is where somebody actually hacks into either your phone lines or your internet lines and then monitors the transactions that you process on your credit card terminals or your software systems or whatever it is you're using. And basically can be as simple as just hacking into your phone line on the back of your building and watching a transaction go by, replicating all the information off of it, and then selling it on the internet to somebody as a credit card. The other one that's probably more common and people hear a lot about is called skimming. And skimming can be done by an employee. It can be done by somebody who puts a device on your ATMs at banks, gas pumps. We recently saw an article in Cleveland where people are now installing skimmers inside the gas pumps on the furthest row of pumps from the cashier where they can't be seen. They figured out that it takes less than a minute while they're pumping a tank of gas to put a skimmer on the inside. The Department of Weights and Measures actually started finding these devices in Cleveland. So your tip today is when you get gas, stay close to the counter.
What does the skimmer do?
The skimmer basically can be used, and employees will have these skimmers. You'll often see at a convenience store an employee, we've had some recent ones where employees will have skimmers on their belts. They'll take your card as you hand it to them, and they simply just pass it across the belt. It's a skimmer, it's a magnetic stripe reader. It captures all the information needed to run a transaction. They might even act like they're cleaning the magnetic stripe reader off, and then they'll scan it through the machine. They've just captured that information. They can either transmit it wireless or download it later. Skimmers can also be on the front of ATMs. Anywhere you put a card in, if you're using a vending machine that perhaps accepts plastic, you always want to make sure there's nothing loose or just doesn't look normal. If you're a PNC Bank customer, most of our ATMs look identical. If one of them all of a sudden looks different, you definitely want to question that.
Are those very easy to detect?
Well, the gas pumps threw us for a loop in the industry because they're internal. They're literally a wireless device on the inside of the gas pump. And had the Department of Weights and Measures not recognized them, nobody would have.
Wow. So that puts more work and responsibility on the banks as well as us as individuals to be ever watchful.
And then one other place that there's a lot of fraud in that same aspect of stealing information is simply in the storage of credit card information. The business owner could be storing things on a Rolodex, and any contractor or employee of that business can simply access that credit card information as needed. It could be stored in software that's not encrypted. It could be stored in a terminal that a retail establishment uses, and it's not encrypted. And think about yourselves when you go to a restaurant, you hand some lovely young man or young woman your credit card and let them walk across the building with it. You have no idea what they do with that information. So, and how does the business protect that information?
I can't wait till we use our thumbprint or eye scanner, and then I'm sure they'll catch up, though. I'm sure the criminals will catch up to that, but it's a good start. I have a question for anyone on the panel. Is it appropriate for a company to monitor the emails and the website activity of their employees?
Yeah, you guys can answer that.
Yes. That's something that should be addressed in the employee manual, but they kind of don't have their own privacy, if you will, because it's a company computer, so that's fair game. Telephone conversations, I've been told, have been monitored as well as within organizations. You're acting on behalf of the company, and those particular devices are the company's. Even some of these that are issued by our organizations, they have a right to. I know those are all items that when we go in to do an investigation and, if we're doing an interrogation or whatnot, those are things and devices that we're gathering information off of with today's technology. Right?
Yeah, there's some things you can do. Like I stated previously this morning, if you own the machine that your employees are working on, you can have a banner that comes up and just set forth some things. You're entering the company's literally electronic workspace, and you cannot do certain things if you've got intellectual property, for instance, or intellectual property can be business plans also, your customer lists, supply chain information. So if you have a banner where that comes up every morning, it really strengthens your hand if issues come up later, both if you want to pursue a criminal prosecution or if you want to just pursue termination. The other issue is, there is precedence out there for large companies saying you can't do certain things on the internet. There's a very large company here in the greater area, Cleveland area, that just doesn't allow email use except for with the company's email account. So you can't use Gmail or Yahoo Mail or whatever else you might want to use for your personal email interaction. So I think if you're the business owner, you have a right to say you can do this and you can't do that. Facebook, other social networking sites, those are known to be attack vectors for malicious software too. Okay, so.
And for employers to check out future employees from Facebook, and if they're dumb enough to put it on there, you probably don't want to hire them. Okay, Peggy, from a bank's perspective, what can a business owner do to protect themselves against check fraud?
Well, there's many things that we can do to assist our clients, our business client, to cut down on the potentials of check fraud. First of all, we'd like for you to cut down on the use of checks. And there's ways that we can assist you making things more electronic. However, there are some instances where we do need to, businesses need to continue to write checks. And therefore, we have systems that we can offer to you that allow you to tell us, as often as you write checks, some detailed information regarding those checks that you've written. As those checks come in to clear, we make sure that as you have written those items, that's how they actually clear. Or as Chrissy had referred to, that's referred to as positive pay. She also referred to negative pay, but we refer to it as reverse positive pay, where we can actually present to you, the business owner, items that are clearing on a daily basis, and then you can decide if those items are appropriately written or not before they actually complete the clearing of your checking account. So that's on the check side of everything. There's more on the electronic side. There's ways that we can, because we're talking about payments and we're pushing things out, making that whether you're paying a vendor or whether you're paying an employee for payroll. On the electronic side, we can help you. People or our business clients feel if they go out to a website and they're asking or having maybe CEI or somebody, a utility, or going out to somebody else's website, and they have funds coming out of their account electronically, that they're pushing money out to those particular vendors. Well, actually, those vendors are debiting your account. They have your information, just like when you write a check. You've given up your routing information, your checking account information, your possibility of your check stock when you write that check out to people, the check number, and almost how much money you have in your account. Is it payroll day? Is it a large vendor that you're paying? Same on the electronic side. Whenever you're paying items, you're giving out your routing information, your checking account information, and that is something that you should protect at all costs. You should have that close to your vest and give it out to as little people as possible. So on the electronic side, even though you think you're having people come in, you're still pushing those payments out because you're allowing funds to be removed from your account. We can allow you, the business owner, to set up rules regarding how those funds come out. If you have CEI coming in to take your, money from your checking account for your utilities, you can allow that, you can set up rules within our systems that we can help you with that say CEI is allowed to debit my checking account once per month for no more than, say, I don't know, whatever your utility bill is, let's say $3,000. And it's important to have that type of a catch in there because I have an example. I have a client that didn't have this particular service, and although it was a phone bill that was regularly debited from their checking account, they came in, they went to the phone company, said, hey, go ahead and make my monthly payment. And somehow in translation, instead of $6,000 for their phone bill, it came out as $66,000. That stopped all operations in that company because now they have no money to work with. They were drawing on lines of credit that they were almost maxed out at. They were making phone calls to their business relationship manager asking for increases in lines of credit. If they had had some protection into place on the electronic side, this would not have happened. Same on the check side. You have employees that you give payroll checks out to that go to the local bar that cash those checks. Maybe the bar owner's not the one copying those items, but maybe it's their employees that are running to the bank and saying, hey, I'm going to stop by Kinko's and make this copy real quick. If you had a service in place that we can offer you, and you've given us the detailed information regarding those checks and how they should clear, if a copy of a check tries to clear, we're going to notify you and say, hey, business owner, you told us check 1234 written to Joe Smith on May 1st for $500 is trying to clear a second time, and or it's trying to clear for more than you actually wrote the check for. You now have some control into place, and that helps stop it on at least the payments side.
Okay, thank you. For any of you, are you noticing?
How do you mail those as
Oh,
well?
Sorry.
Where do you leave those outgoing mail with your checks in it? I had a previous employer that actually put it in a United States Postal Service box at the airport for a mass mailing, and the postal employee stole the check and altered it. So be cognizant of where you're mailing those out at too. Never place outgoing mail on a personal level in your mailbox at your home, because we all know you live in a nice neighborhood and everyone goes to work every day. So those guys know, based upon your surroundings, that you've got money in your accounts and they're going to get those checks as well.
I've been told, Chrissy, that the red flag up on your mailbox is a come steal me flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Chrissy not only is smart, she's also psychic, because my question was going to be, what about mail theft, where those of us who put it into our mailbox, maybe we're paying a bill, a credit card bill, or our bank statements come to us, of course, from our banks. What are you seeing there? And I mean, there's one piece of advice right there I never thought of, to not put those into my personal mailbox.
Think like a crook. No.
Are you seeing this a lot?
Not a lot, but just certain instances that you come across. Anybody in here have dual check writing authority where you need 2 signatures for checks over a certain dollar amount? I had a non-for-profit where we had the controller had his signature was electronically put onto the check, and then he would physically sign the second line. Got out $200,000 out of the company that way. We thought good procedures were in place, but as you know, those checks are all run through a clearinghouse, and the bank does not physically look at every single check. It's impossible to do. So, you've got to make sure that you've got good procedures in place and they're being used properly.
Wow. Okay. Jim, what are some of the latest recommendations to mitigate fraud?
There's two areas that I like to talk about a lot that are kind of current, both in the industry and in the press right now. One of them is the encrypting and what we call tokenizing of transactions. So believe it or not, a lot of people are processing today. Hopefully nobody in the room's still processing this way, but they're processing either with software or physical hardware or equipment or terminals that don't encrypt the transactions. Several of our peers in the industry don't require things to be encrypted before they're sent over. So that just opens you up to exposure for people that are hacking into the transmission of those transactions. But they can you also have some devices that are still storing the information all day, and that information is not encrypted. So anybody could come in and either take the device or print out a batch report or a settlement report, including an employee, especially if you think like a restaurant at night, there's not a lot of people around, and they can print out the list of every transaction run that day. Encryption fixes that. The latest thing in the industry now is called tokenization. PNC obviously offers tokenization, and some of our competitors do also. But what this system does is it actually takes the transaction and replaces it with a fake number. So it looks like a credit number, it looks like a credit card number. Somebody hacking into the transmission or stealing the information thinks they have a credit card number, and they go to use it, and it's just a fictional number. It's basically replacing that transaction with a one-time use number that can only be used for that transaction. So that's a big thing in the industry. And the other thing that hopefully you're hearing about is the United States migrating to a system or a policy called EMV, and that stands for Europay, MasterCard, Visa. Those of you who travel out of the country have probably realized that most of the credit cards in other countries or your travel cards have a chip in the card instead of a magnetic strip. The United States has not gotten on this bandwagon of this brand new 8-year-old technology, but we're migrating there today. So as of the end of 2012, all of the credit card processors in the country had to be able to accept a chipped card. Doesn't mean anybody will present one. But the big thing for business owners is that in 2015, the liability for a fraudulent transaction goes from the banks, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, and the issuers of the cards to the business owner. So today, if I walk in with a fraudulent card to Best Buy and I buy a $1,000 TV, somebody, if everything was done right, is going to pick up the tab on that other than Best Buy. In 2015, if they're not adhering to EMV and all of the fraud protection rules, Best Buy will be out that money. So for a small business, especially if you're in the service business where you could have a very large ticket, it could be catastrophic.
I use a credit card system on the internet to run credit cards. It's supposed to have several layers. We keep changing the password and so on. What can I do as a merchant to protect myself?
As a merchant in internet processing, the first thing I would do is make sure that you're working with one of the most popular and, of course, safest gateways. In the internet processing world, a transaction has to, whether it's from a shopping cart or just a one-time service like a nonprofit, I'm donating $100, it has to go through what's called a gateway before it actually gets to the processor. And that's where all the credit card information is housed and then encrypted and sent. So if you're working with one of the top most secure gateways, that's your best bet. If you're not sure, you can reach out to somebody who's in the industry, or reach out and just get onto Visa or MasterCard's websites and do a search for merchants for e-commerce, and it'll take you very, as detailed as you want to get into how secure you want the transaction to be and things that you can do. Because there are services even offered by the associations like Visa to encrypt those transactions further and make them safe.
Okay. After you've hired someone, and this is for anyone, after you've hired someone, they've been an employee for a while, Is it appropriate at that time because of suspicious emails or suspicious behavior to do another background check?
I'm assuming you're meaning a background check on the civil or criminal level, so that would only be showing up with, like, if they were indicted on a felony or any type of arresting warrants that have gone out. I don't know where that background check might get you at that point. I would be more apt, like when I go in and we have a suspect that we suspect of potentially stealing, I'm interested in their credit, what assets do they own? Some of those background checks you could run at that level to find out what assets they own. Giving away my trade secrets here. A lot of times certain background checks, because we suspect fraud, we'll get the information as to their vehicles, their houses, associates that are related to them that have lived under the same house, family member names, license plate numbers, certain things like that, where we're able to, find out where they're going, things that they've bought. So I guess it all depends on why you suspect them and as to what is going on. A lot of times I'm more interested at the credit check level to see, if all of a sudden their mortgage has been paid off and their car payments have all been paid off, those types of things, to show where they've been going with the funds that we suspect that they're allegedly stealing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, let me just say, I'm not sure what you would be looking for. I mean, if you got an employee that's had a criminal problem, they probably missed some work because they've got to go to court and then maybe time in jail if it's bad enough. So you're going to know there's an issue. I think the idea of knowing, I don't know how ethical this is, what kind of a business environment, work environment you want to have, but if suddenly you've got an employee that has a huge debt, beyond, the mortgage, it could be an indicator that they might be predisposed to doing something to fix that financial problem. I think, personally, I think most of us have a pretty good sense for when something is not right. Some would call that the sixth sense, but, over the course of years, you'll know how a person acts and reacts to certain situations, and if suddenly, one of your employees is just different for some reason, there's something, I think, that's going to be triggered, and that, maybe something's amiss, and hopefully you're having conversations with the person throughout each given week, and you'll know if something is going on in the life. So that's probably more of a touchy-feely answer to that question, but you folks are not going to have the resources that we do, okay? So we do go out, and every 5 years, we do, a full criminal history check on our people and a lot of databases that you're not going to have access to make sure that we're not batting for the other team, if you know what I mean. But that's something that the federal government intelligence services do. I just don't think those resources beyond credit checks or just the general intelligence that you're going to find out from within the office, you're not going to know if there's a problem with an employee.
Thank you. Peggy, are there any everyday steps that businesses can be taken to assist in protecting a business from fraud?
Yes, good question. There are some that we really like to see on a regular basis. I think Chrissy's touched on a couple of them. One is to make sure that your check stock and your endorsement stamps are locked up at all times and under dual control, meaning that not one person has complete access to obtaining either one of them or both of those. Another one is to facilitate, and we've just talked a lot about that, about background checks, making sure that you've done criminal and civil background checks on your employees. One that kind of throws people off a lot is surprise audits. If you have employees that have access to your check stock, writing out checks for payments, or even your receivables, like we had mentioned before, skimming or shorting of a transaction and then taking the cash from an actual customer in the parking lot. If you do a surprise audit, Number one, employees are going to think twice about either taking money or even thinking about it. And number two, when you do the surprise audit, you're probably going to catch that information. Surprise audit of a till or any type of, just, hey, I want to take a look at today's receivables. Let's take a look at what happened. Tell me, show me all the invoices that we have, and just however you want to conduct that audit, make sure that you do it, and not regularly. Do it here and there, be sporadic about it. Mandate a full week's vacation. When an employee is gone for a week, things are going to start to surface. Or you're going to have employees that don't want to take a full week's vacation, and that's going to give you cause for hey, what's going on? Why would that employee not want to take a full week's vacation? They've been here almost 50 weeks out of the entire year. There's a reason why. So let's take a look at it. That's something that's unusual. I don't think a lot of employers really think about. But yeah, mandating a full week's vacation is a really great one. Another one is, like I had mentioned earlier, we want you to cut down on the use of writing checks. So we want you to become more electronic in what you're doing. Another good thing to do is use credit cards. Use a line of credit. When you use a credit card, you are using taking the ability of not eating into your current cash flow and hurting your operating in cash and operating cycle. You're utilizing a line of credit, something that you can place a stop to, something that you can either increase or go to and grab something else, but you're not worried about how your operating cash is actually affected, and it not going to cause you any detrimental harm. With Visa and MasterCard, and maybe Jim can talk a little bit about this, but there's safeguards put into place, employee misuse liabilities, and fraud liabilities that are out there as far as zero liability. So you want to be able to utilize that type of a system more than your own actual cash. Make direct deposit to your employees. A lot of employers, I hear this on a regular basis, no, we're still paper driven. We write those checks. I like to be in control. I like to sign people's paychecks. I like to physically hand out the paychecks. Well, at PNC, we can offer you a way that you can make those direct deposits electronically and still have that control, where you have dual control over that information that's going out before it's actually paid out. But like we had mentioned before, you hand out these paychecks or you mail them out. You got employees running to the bar or to Walmart, cashing payroll checks, going to these check-into cash places, and very dishonest people hang out at those types of institutions. And so we want to make sure that people don't have your routing, checking account, and check stock information and what your signature looks like. So we want you to use more electronic ways to make payroll. Account structure. How you structure your accounts is really, really important. Sitting down with your banker and a treasury officer and talking about some different solutions. Maybe you have everything coming out of your operating account, and that's not the proper solution for you. If you're going to continue to write payroll checks, not only are we going to ask you to put something into place that's going to, we talked about before, that's going to help you mitigate the possibilities of check fraud, but we're also wanting to separate that from your operating account, because now not only does that person possibly have not only payroll, but now they have access to your entire operation. So how you structure your accounts is highly important. And then lastly, information management is key. Having access to a very robust system, able to put controls into place, having yourself or somebody in your organization take a look at your accounts on a regular daily basis. There are so many myths out there in regards to what a bank is responsible for and liable for in regards to reimbursing or not reimbursing a client for fraudulent activity. As a business owner, you have a fiduciary responsibility to maintain and the access to your cash and how that's done. The bank isn't always going to step in and refund your money 100%, and you have to make sure that you have access to that information on a regular basis as far as your online banking, as far as what's happening, as far as transactions are concerned in your checking account. One of the things in regards to electronic fraud, technically you have 24 business hours to report that fraud from the time that it happened to a bank. So before we, start to look at it and then go through our procedures, doesn't mean that we're always going to refund it to you. We may ask you to share in that, or we may not support it at all. So information management and having a robust system that you can rely on and have somebody with checks and balances, dual control over is highly important.
Jim, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
That wasn't the right answer, Jim.
Just got me thinking now. From the everyday activities, from the business's perspective in the credit card world, it's really just about protecting the information, understanding who your customer is. We'll be dispersing a sheet that has some tips for reducing credit card fraud, but your daily activities are really, as a business owner or somebody who works in a business, the thing that is just too good to be true is usually too good to be true. Don't take credit card information from people and leave it out. Don't take it out of the normal way. If you normally operate business in a certain way and somebody is asking you to do it in a different way, there's usually a reason or a risk to it. So anytime you're doing something you're uncomfortable with, out of the norm, just don't do it. Second guess it, think about it. Call the number on the back of the credit card, ask if it's legitimate, and you can usually catch things pretty quickly.
Do we have any defense against having dinner at Fahrenheit and a waiter taking our credit card and getting that information themselves right now? Do we have any option? We don't.
No, but I will say, myself personally, I do not use a debit card for anything. And it kind of speaks to what Peggy was saying is, I'm not going to give anybody access to money in my checking account. And if I am going to be frauded, I would prefer that they fraud me on my credit card, not my debit card, because there are protections in place for the consumer. That will change as time changes, but as of right now, if somebody steals your identity, you call your credit card company and you're like, hey, shut it down, they issue you a new card, they waive all the money. If it's a debit card, by the time you figure out you were frauded, they've cleaned out your checking account.
That's a really good point about just using your credit cards. All right, we are going to hold questions and answers until the end of the third panel, but I'd like to thank Jim, Peggy, and again, Chrissy and Mike for participating today. We really appreciate your information. Thanks, everyone. We're going to get started with our third panel. The handouts that we've been promising you, everybody has a great deal of information to provide you in the handouts. They will be emailed to you, and when you registered, you provided an email address. So they will be emailed to you within the next few days. So don't worry, you will be getting that information. And if you have to leave early, not a problem, because we're going to email all that to you. Okay, I'm going to call up our third panel, women business owners. Ellen Sam Shear, Debbie May, Lisa Holly. Your names are there. Lisa, you're at the end.
I'm going to go the other way.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Be careful of the edge. Speaking of feedback, there have been some comments about feedback from the microphones. We've adjusted them a little bit, so we're trying to, our engineers aren't getting feedback, so we adjusted the microphones a little bit, so we hope we eliminate most of the feedback. Speaking of other feedback, I've heard some really good comments about the event and how wonderful it's been so far, so thank you again to all of the people involved in putting this event together and all of our expert panelists who are really helping us, so thank you. And thank you to NAWBO for entrusting me in this role. Okay, Ellen, but we never call her Ellen, we call her Sam. Sam Shear is a dedicated American Family Insurance agent in Middleburg Heights. Her office includes one full-time licensed assistant and one agent in training. She has received, talk about awards that Paul was mentioning, the American Star Award for Customer Service for the past 8 years. She has also been an Agent of the Month, 5-Year Profit Leader, Life Agent of the Month, All-American, and is a member of the 100 App Club. You're such an underachiever, Sam. In the summer, and you're dealing with money that's really critical. In the summer of 2000, Cher received her insurance licenses and opened her agency offering auto, home, business, life, and health insurance, and I'm going to call her Sam, has made insurance options not only flexible but expansive as her business grows to incorporate a one-stop shop for customers. Sam is recognized and respected throughout the industry and is well known within networking circles in her area. Sam loves to educate and share with her clients. It's not about selling insurance, it's about protecting others' dreams. She is currently president of NAWBO Cleveland, a regular supporter of Dress for Success Cleveland, and on the selection committee of Bad Girl Ventures, an organization that is supporting and encouraging entrepreneurs to grow into successful businesswomen. Sam gives back to the community and shows her commitment in every action she takes. Debbie May, we've already heard a lot about Debbie, so we won't reread her bio. And Lisa Holly is president and CEO of Berea Moving and Storage. Lisa became president and CEO of her family's business in 2006. In 2008, she refocused Berea Moving and Storage for the future. The results led to the work her company has done for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum, the Natural History Museum, NASA, and other important Cleveland institutions. She is currently the first woman president, and we're still having firsts, in 75 years of existence of the Cleveland Moving and Warehousemen's Association. Lisa acknowledges that if it weren't for her mother and so many women like her, opportunities would not exist in the world today for women business owners. So thank you for being on the panel. I know you have stories to tell before we actually start our questions and answers. So we'll begin with you, Sam.
Okay. I'm an insurance agent, so everybody thinks the insurance company has a lot of money, right? So in 13 years of business, I've actually been defrauded 3 different times by a customer who thought using fake Social Security numbers. So I never take people at face value anymore. I criminal check everyone that calls my office for insurance. The second time was an employee. My first year in business, I got her from another agent, and I was brand new, and she knew the system better than I did. She was actually accepting down payments from people, taking out of my account and taking the money home. So obviously she's not with me anymore. The third time was a couple of years ago when, just like everyone in this room, I go to network events all the time, and I was had my accounts all set up in PayPal. And one morning I got up and I went to put gas in my car, and credit card didn't work. And I thought, oh, I don't know what that is, so I used my personal one and went on about my business. I got to the office, and just like I do every morning, I pulled up my accounts. All the money was being taken out of my business account. It was in pending, called the bank, stopped it. But had I not done that, I would not have known that PayPal had been hacked that day and everyone was losing their money. So those are the types of frauds that I've had. I also, from your standpoint, if you know anything about insurance, when you call me, I have to take your birth date, Social Security number. I get to know a lot about you. So I have checks and balances in my office where that stuff is never, you can't access it again. If you're a client of mine and you want to add a product, I have to ask for that information from you again. It doesn't even show up in my system. So.
So we have to trust you too.
Yes, you do have to trust me.
Okay, Debbie?
Well, you've heard the story. The good news is we're profitable and we are making money, and our employees, customers, and consultants don't appear to be taking it. The biggest thing I learned is that while I'm creative and I love growing the business, I had to learn to like what I didn't do well, which was the numbers. I had to take the accounting classes I despised, and I had to learn to get good at the numbers. I learned you can't trust people as much as you think you can, you can't. We put systems in place where we're very unpredictable. I found that being predictable gave people certain opportunities. There's a month that I'll say to the bookkeeper, you know what, I'm going to reconcile this month. Just out of the blue, not even spot checking. This month I'm going to reconcile. Keeps my fingers in it so that I'm not hostage to what she can do. But I also, am able to catch problems. Fortunately, it's all balanced to the penny, so I've been kind of lucky. And the other thing is, as much as you'd like to say you can trust, you just can't. I've been frauded by family, I've been frauded by employees, I've been frauded by customers, and you just have to develop an edge to yourself that as much as you're a good person, there's bad people out there. So I think the rest we can cover in tips, but the big thing is learn to read a balance sheet, profit loss, learn to do the accounting. I hated it, but I feel like it's saved me tens of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. Lisa?
Here.
It's on.
Thank you.
Well, speak directly into it.
Okay, I can do that as this tall girl. Good afternoon, everyone. I have been, I think, a little bit more blessed than some of the stories that we've heard today. Only one occasion in 52 years can I say that there was something that was really bad, and that was someone who thought that my signature was prettier than theirs. She's in jail right now for fraud, and I am going to make sure she stays in jail a very long time. She wrote my signature on my company checks. She wrote her signature on the Cleveland Movers and Warehousemen's checks, who I'm the president of that organization. And if that wasn't embarrassing, oh, you bet it was embarrassing. But again, what was talked about by Chrissy, be embarrassed. Go ahead. Be embarrassed. Because you didn't do it. You're not the bad guy. But the bad guy's going to walk away if you don't prosecute them. And I think that that was a huge life lesson for me, because I am a family business. I do trust people. I work with my brother. I work with people that have been with me 15 years, 20 years. They're my family. But I went ahead and did something that I considered extremely brave. And I prosecuted that woman. And like I said, right now her children have been taken away from her, which was sad, maybe, and she is in jail. So you got to do what you got to do. And I think the other thing that we're talking about is fail-safes. And fail-safes are beyond important. And one of the things that I did when I took over our company, my mom died, and instantaneously I became a business owner. And I have no business background. I'm an estimator by trade. I can tell you how much money it costs to move. I can tell you how much money it costs to store something, but I did not own a business. So what I did is I put a forensic accountant in place as my CPA. I made sure that I had, the best attorneys, that I had fraud protection, all the things that I hope protect me. And again, in 52 years, I've been very blessed that I know of that those are the only things that had happened to me. But I think something else that's very important and why they asked me to speak today is my reputation. My reputation is everything to me, and I know it's everything to everybody out here. And one of the things that I do, I'm a service industry. I have nothing to sell but myself. When I go to work every day, I have your sofa. I have your bottle of wine that's worth $100,000. I have your painting that's worth $350,000. I have your grandmother's heirloom rocker from 1820. If I don't have trust, I have nothing. I am a service business. So one of the things that we do with PNC Bank is spend a lot of money. And we spend a lot of money on cameras, monitors, motion detectors, background checks, and then it goes on and on and on, so that I can protect the things that belong to you and your family, so that in return, you and your family come back to me and use my company. And I think that that's something that's so important in and I use service industry, no matter what it is. Because again, we have nothing to sell that's a product. except ourselves, except for our employees, except for our reputation and our name. So if you are in the service industry, I highly recommend, putting as many fail-safes in place as you can.
As women business owners, you are the one that everybody is identifying with, and I understand, you feel guilty about it. Even though you didn't do anything, you feel guilty about it. But it's like a lot of other crimes where people aren't pressing charges, or they decide to not press charges anymore. Then the crimes never get prosecuted. The person never is punished, and then it just goes on and on and on. So it does take courage to follow through on the prosecution and make sure that woman won't do that to somebody else again.
Correct.
So good for you. Sam, one of the things that you had talked about was the debit filters on accounts. Can you expound on that?
I have my business account set up now. I do pay things electronically, but I have listed with my bank who's allowed to take an electronic payment from me and the most they can take. This is what we were talking about earlier. And nothing can go through that is like that. And I had an incident a month ago. I set these accounts up more than 2 years ago. And since then, I've done pay increases, and I did payroll, and my employee was getting paid more. And the bank called me. I set it up to pay her electronically. The bank called me immediately and said, this is too much. So I know it's working.
Wow. Okay, Debbie. When you were talking about, you didn't know numbers, and one of your pieces of advice is no more than profit and loss and the balance sheet. So can you tell, what other things should we be looking for financially?
In terms of everyday things that we do, I'm the only one that has access. My husband has access. He works in the company too, but I'm the only one that has access to the online banking. I'm almost the only one that sees what our sales were for the day before. I can quickly see if those sales didn't hit our bank account. I'm the only one that enters those into QuickBooks so that I know what checks can be cut. I know the trends. If suddenly we're down $20,000 in one day in deposits, something happened. Did my web programmer decide to split the merchant account and send half the money to his bank? He has not done that, but that is possible with programming. I know the trends. I know my profit loss. I know that a month where there's an extra paycheck and an extra UPS bill, I may operate at a loss, but that next month better be at a really healthy profit. So knowing those trends, I watch the profit loss daily. Sometimes I meditate wishing there was more money in it. And then the balance sheet, I'll be honest with you, I know how to read it, but I'm getting better, and there's probably weekly calls to my accountant with why did we do a journal entry? Why is it this way? Well, it turns out part of our electronic payroll was moving insurance contributions into the wrong account, and he made that correction. Had I not been watching for trends to say, hey, wait a minute, we've never done this before, why? So those are the types of things that we look for.
Lisa, you were an estimator. How did you bring yourself up to speed to understand financial statements, the financial aspect? It should be on if you want to use that one. And your forensic accountant. How did that all work to really bring you up to speed as a business owner now?
Well, it is a piece of advice that I hope everyone in this room will take. Business coaches, I think that it is the most transitional, amazing, life-changing, I can't even begin to use all the right words. In 2008, I hired a company called Maximum Value Partners, fellows Jack and Adam. In that time, our company was doing $800,000 in business. We are now doing about $1.6 million in business. I've gone from 20,000 square feet to 60,000 square feet, and on and on and on. And Adam and Jack gave me homework until I cried. I am not exaggerating. Till I cried. I wanted to kill them. I hated them. But they taught me how to read a balance sheet. They taught me how to read a profit and loss statement. They taught me how to make a marketing plan. They taught me how to make a business plan. They taught me how to present my company to investors. Every aspect of running a business was taught to me by my business coaches, and it is how we are starting to finally be a very successful company. And what I feel is that that education is my Baldwin Wallace College. This is my business master's degree, and I'm very proud of what I've done with them, and I'm very proud of them for what they've helped transition other people like me into the same growth pattern that we have. So I would highly recommend a business coach.
That's great advice. Thank you. Sam, I hate to admit this, but I don't know what a key fob is.
It's something my bank gave me. When I go to make my electronic transfers, it takes the key fob, that's what I call it, 2 different codes out of that before that, and my password before that transaction will go through.
So I'm assuming you're highly recommending. Anybody else
I'm
using
highly
key
recommending
fobs?
that.
So I'm one of the few that doesn't know what that means. Okay. Debbie, you?
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
She has one.
okay.
There you go.
Tell me this isn't educational. A key fob. If your bank doesn't have them, then I guess that means you need to call PNC. And remind me to give this back to you. Sorry, they're not paying me for that plug. They are not. You could. Okay, Chrissy and Debbie were very like-minded in talking about think like a thief. So, Debbie, is there anything else you'd like to say about that comment as we're trying to think like a thief?
No, just, I'll be honest with you, I go on Google and I try to learn to be like a thief. You know, I pull up, what is the latest fraud? What is the, latest? There is a wealth of information, not all of it good, but you can tell when you read it. But, one of the arguments my husband and I have at night when you really aren't engaged in the show, he's playing Candy Crush. And it just drives me crazy because I'm looking up things on how to improve lean manufacturing. But you have to think like a thief. An example that came up that I thought about during one of the other presentations was one of the things our warehouse workers do at the end of each day is they take out the garbage. Not a problem. Dumpster gets a little overloaded. What do? You set the garbage bags on the side. Never noticed, took us a couple months, one of the girls was filling up a garbage bag and setting it out with good stuff and then coming back later and picking it up. Little bits, not enough where it's thousands of dollars in 1 month, but it did add up to thousands of dollars over a period of time. It wasn't until we started reading about some things on the internet, that we realized, hey, we need to look at this or we need to look at that. So, look at your system, where you store your checks, how you sign. No one signs a check but me or my husband. And if we go on vacation, we just call our vendors. You're not going to get paid for a week. And it's usually not a problem because we pay ahead, but we just don't do it. We are the only ones that will trigger a payroll. We have a bookkeeper that does the time clock, but we are the only ones that initiate the actual payroll payments. And a lot of that's just from reading on the internet. I'm paranoid.
These stories are unbelievable because these are just, employees that you've had, and you're not trying to anticipate that somebody's going to be doing something criminal, and the next thing they're so devious that they're using garbage bags. So these are great stories to help everybody. Thank you. Lisa, when you were talking about to be sure that your money is flowing properly, you have a 90-day cash flow report, and so what do you do with that, and how does that help you?
A 90-day cash flow, and again, something that Adam and Jack put in place at my company. Every single day, we look at all accounts receivable. If it is not been paid on the due date, we call that company. We put a note in the memo, and we forward it to the day that they say it's going to be paid. Same thing with my payables. God forbid that I can't pay something when it is due. I will call that company so that I don't look like a schmo, and I will forward it. That's two things. Then obviously at the end of each day, I can see if I have any cash. By looking at that 90-day cash flow, I can look a month ahead and go, oh my gosh, on Tuesday, October something, I'm not going to have any money at the end of the day. Maybe I better alter what I'm doing so that I can make that a day with income. And again, every single day. It keeps me in touch with my money. And again, I would highly recommend anyone that does not do a 90-day cash flow, implement that into their system.
And I'm sure your forensic accountant was helpful.
Oh, yeah. That guy. You know what, and I do want to comment on that. You know when we were talking about earlier, that little fear factor, that little, you never know when somebody's going to pop up, you never know when somebody's going to do an audit. The people who I love and trust, and I will start that out, they know that my CPA is not the average Joe, that he is an expert witness, he is a forensic accountant, and God help you if you steal $1 from me. And I just, and again, I feel icky. I do feel icky. I think it's a woman thing that I did that. But my butt is covered at all times. And everybody doesn't know what's going to happen. So keeping people on their toes all the time, having that type of a CPA, I think, again, is something that has been very beneficial to my company.
Well, you've seen Chrissy. Do you really want her coming after you? No. I think not. Okay, Sam, don't be afraid to fire a customer. What do you mean?
Don't be afraid to fire. I have fired customers before. As I started out, I had a gentleman early on in my career that called for homeowners insurance and gave me a fake Social Security number. And I remember it very vividly because then he called me on that Good Friday and said that somebody had stolen everything out of this house he'd refurbished. Fixtures, everything. He'd stolen it. He said thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, then on Easter Sunday, that house burned to the ground. So we have a theft claim and we have a fire. What I didn't know is he'd already defrauded 5 insurance companies.
Oh.
That house, before I saw it, was deemed to be torn down by the city. Then he put his money into it to refurbish it to make it insurable, and then he burned it. He took his stuff out first. He's in jail. So you have to look for clients. You have to look for clients that give you what you need. I'm in a service business too. But like I said, I check everybody that calls my office against the criminal database. I caught one just a couple of months ago. He called from Lorain County. Why would you call a Cuyahoga County insurance agent from Lorain County for car insurance? Mm-hmm. Plugged him in. He's wanted for car theft. So where'd he get the car? And I just, after I did that, I called him back and I said, sir, I don't believe we can do business together. And he's suddenly click. So you have to choose your clients well.
Well, apparently they're not afraid of asking for car insurance on a stolen car. They're wise to keep it covered.
Right. Well, no, then they report it stolen.
You know, it seems like so much energy and effort to put these fraud schemes into place. It's amazing. If that were turned into something good, we probably wouldn't have to rely on gas and oil for energy. Debbie, you had a similar comment about not being afraid to fire a customer.
We take it seriously, but we do fire customers. If we get customers that repeatedly tell us their package didn't arrive, even though UPS has told us it has arrived, or if items are, we know that we have a .0001 error rate, but every single one of their orders is missing something, we know we probably have a fraud situation. Before we went to a robust database, we literally had a manila folder with an alien on the front, and those were our suspected frauds. We'd say, give me the alien file. Now we had our programmer program our database in a way that when they place an order and they have committed fraud that we provide, and we ask them not to do business with us again, we're able to flag them. When they change their name, and I'm not going to tell you the identifying information that flags them because we're being videotaped, but when they place an order, I get an email along with the office manager. They can change their name, they can change their address, they can change their phone number, they can change almost all their information, and we're able to track them. We then refund that order, cancel it, tell them thank you, but no thank you, and we move on. It's no longer, it may sound a little bit arrogant, but we do have 200,000 customers, and at this point, I'm not going to risk it. I'm not going to risk the continued loss, and I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of ripping us off anymore.
Very good. That's not arrogant at all. Lisa, you have one point about how you protect with the check writing and also how you use the credit cards within your company.
As far as the check writing, similar, there are only 2 signers on my account. That is myself, and that is my brother Woody, who is my partner. Again, because of what that woman did to me, I have the heebie-jeebies, and no one else, even though I have a trusted general manager, I would not even allow her to sign my checks. Only my brother and only myself, not my husband, not his wife, my brother's wife. Nobody is going to sign our checks. And I apologize, the second question?
Oh, about the credit cards and each employee's name.
Yes, we have, through PNC as our bank, has been for many years, we have a credit card in each employee's name. And every month when the credit card statements come in, one of the girls, and periodically myself, to spot check, we check those credit card statements that come in for each employee. And obviously, if Victoria's Secrets is on one of my guys' credit card statements, they are automatically fired. And that is in our policies, do not steal from me. It doesn't say that in the employee handbook, but it's unwritten law with my employment attorney that, that's right. That's right. It's in our employee handbook, right, Jennifer? But we, again, a check and balance. Please know that as an employee, I love you. And I actually do say that. I don't know if I'm allowed or not, but I do love my work family very, very much. But again, don't steal from me. So we check the statements. And what I ask all the employees, fuel. That's what those credit cards are for. Fuel for my trucks so that I don't have to hand out cash, so that I can send them out of town, because trucks guzzle fuel. I only get 7 miles to the gallon on most of my moving trucks. So they go through a lot of money when they're going out on the road, locally, interstate, what have you. So that's what I'm asking. Use them for fuel, a tire blows, something like that. And again, so if I see something besides fuel or a tire, red flag, huge red flag. And I have, thankfully, never had an employee use their credit card for anything else. But I think that a credit card in their specific name, not just a card that you hand out to whomever is in line for gas, was the best thing that PNC Bank had us do. Because about 3-4 years ago, we did have like 1 or 2 credit cards, and I can shamefully say that I said, here, Ralph, you use it. Hey, Vince, go take the card. And then I never knew who was using it. So again, I think that employees that need a credit card should have one in their name only, and you should be checking the statements, every month.
Very good. And it's not unusual that business owners, especially women business owners, love their employees, because it does become a family business. My dad was World War II generation. He had a landscaping company. He had a cash business. And I mean a cash business. He did not have a credit card. He did have a company checking account because his customers paid by check. He paid his employees in cash. and he kept the money in a safe. So, he'd make payroll, and he'd be handing out cash to everybody. And his wills were in there. All the important papers were in there. And I asked him one day what the combination to the safe was. I'm the oldest daughter. I was the executor of the wills. He said, if you need to get into it, you can break into it. So talk about not trusting anybody with that kind of valuable information. And then sure enough, he went in the hospital and we had to break into the safe. But before that, somebody broke into my parents' house because they knew it was a cash business. Because people talk, paid in cash, everybody knew he had a cash business. They couldn't get into the safe because they didn't know how to break into it. So everybody has their own checks and balances, I guess. That's a very old-fashioned way to do it. It worked for him, but I would not recommend cash business for anybody anymore. Okay, Sam, are there any last comments or words of advice that you would like to offer?
Before I started my business, I trusted everybody. I don't trust anybody now. Nobody. I've had the same office assistant for 12 years. She's obviously running my business this morning, but I already checked the bank account, and I already know what's going on there. You can't walk away from it if you own your own business.
Thank you. Debbie?
Love your business like it's your child. Grow it, but stalk it. I have a daughter in college, can you tell? For me, it's the most rewarding thing besides my kids and my family that I've ever done, but it can also be the most frustrating at times. One of the things I think I haven't mentioned that I've done is not only trying to self-educate, but I've gone back for an executive MBA at Baldwin-Wallace. There are no tests. My finance class right now, there are no tests, but he's teaching us how to spot fraud from the CFO level, what to check for, because if you're the president and the CEO, you're signing that tax return, and if it's wrong, it's you facing the jail time. So always educate. You're never too old to go back to school. You're never too old to learn something new. And I'm a firm believer that it'll pay you back in full.
Thank you.
Boy, am I among some amazing women. I was just sitting here, and I'm at loss for words. It's very true. You have to trust. You have to still believe. You still have to have hope for people. You still have to believe in the people that work for you. You didn't hire them because you hated them. You hired them because you felt that they were going to be a good part of the team. But as we've just said, you also have to protect your own self at all times. And I think that's the only, to me, the only downside perhaps of owning a business, because I absolutely love what I do, is having to be a little bit hard. Having to be, I call it D, dominant and demanding. But it's still so rewarding. And I think, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I also think that the employees who know that you are watching them, just like children need structure, I think that your employees need structure too. And I think that if they know they work in a place where they're not going to get away with it, perhaps the temptations will never come to them. So I think that check and balance is a good thing. To educate yourself is amazing. To go on the internet instead of watching NCIS. I think that all those things are what we all need to do as small business owners, and never stop believing.
I think it's great that you can share the stories so we know what to look out for and what to be aware of some of the schemes are. Chrissy, would you remind me the triangle? Opportunity, rationalization, and pressure. And that can happen to any employee, even a really good employee. An illness in the family, a death in the family, their husband's job, their husband's business, things can go wrong, and they can see that, unfortunately, as an opportunity. But that's hurting you, your company, and your employees. So that's still a crime, regardless.
I apologize, always me interrupting. You know, something that's never been talked about, and it has been, but it hasn't, and we're talking about opportunities. Drugs. I think that, to me, one of the biggest reasons that people need to steal, besides somebody being sick or going to college, is drugs. Mm-hmm. Drug test your employees, drug-free workplace, DOT drug testing. Drugs change nice people. Unfortunately, in my lifetime, in the moving and storage business, there are a lot of movers over my 37-year career that I saw somebody tear a rotacuff, and now they're a drug addict. I saw somebody blow out their knee, and an innocent drug that was given to them by their doctor for pain management, now they're a drug addict. I've seen them become, if you will, pimps. I've seen them go out and steal from, their business, from stores, watch your employees, drug test them. Drug testing your employees is going to save their life and maybe yours too.
I want to thank Lisa, Debbie, Mike, Jim, Sam, Peggy, and Chrissy. Woohoo! And sorry, Matt, I almost passed with flying colors. I'd like to introduce Beth Marcello. She is the Director of Women's Business Development at PNC Bank. As Director of Women's Business Development, Beth manages a program to increase the bank's support of businesses owned or run by women. Under her leadership, the bank's core of PNC certified women's business advocates has grown to more than 1,000 men and women, and several relevant benchmarks of success, including lending to women-owned businesses, have exceeded their goals. Beth understands women decision-makers firsthand. Before joining PNC in 2006, she was the owner of PR Writing, a marketing communications consulting company established in 1990. She is also an adjunct professor at the University of Pittsburgh, where she teaches business writing to undergraduate upperclassmen. Based in Pittsburgh, Beth is a board member of the Birmingham Foundation, Women Presidents Organization, and City Theater. She also chairs the Pittsburgh Athena Ward Host Committee and the Advisory Council of Strong Women, Strong Girls. Like Paul Clark, these PNC people are underachievers. Beth?
Thank you, everyone. I have a little bit of a cold, so I apologize. I do want to, again, thank this awesome panel all day long. And these women, don't you love how strong and fierce they are? I also really want to thank NAWBO for giving us the opportunity to partner with you on this workshop. In fact, we've been talking at our table. PNC operates in 19 states and the District of Columbia, and we were talking about how we might replicate this with NAWBO and some of the other markets that where we work. And in fact, we were just, I don't know if there were any NAWBO members here who were in Miami last week for the national conference. We participated and supported the conference as well. So we're really happy to be supporting NAWBO and partnering with NAWBO on really informative workshops like this. It also occurred to me that today's session was pretty sobering. I learned a lot today, and it made me think that everyone in this room who's a business owner really needs an advocate, and we're really good at that at PNC. We have all of our bankers are advocates, but we also have a core of about 1,200 PNC certified women's business advocates. So bankers who are really concerned with and engaged around and passionate about supporting the growth of companies owned and run by women. And there's a reason for that. Women-owned companies are the fastest growing segment of businesses in our country, but there's still a gap that we're able to measure between the size of women-owned companies and the size of men-owned companies. And at PNC, we strongly believe that if women are going to be the fastest growing segment of small businesses, we can really help accelerate your growth and accelerate our economy's growth if we can help you grow faster. And that's why we really care about supporting women-owned businesses. With that, thank you so much for attending today. I hope it's been helpful and informative to you. A lot of the tools we talked about, and I'll put another plug in for Cash Flow Insight. It's a brand new tool with the new release that's coming out in a couple of weeks. It really does help business owners see that forecast and that progression. It's one of the reasons we really feel strongly. We know that women sometimes are debt averse, and we feel confident that when you're able to see the money that you're making and forecast your receivables more accurately, you'll feel more confident about taking those next steps to grow. So thank you for coming, and please reach out to us if there's anything we can do to be helpful to you. Thank you.